Hey, what's going on, guys? I will give you guys a chance to come into the conversation. My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World and the Black Business School. Good morning, everybody. As you guys know, we'd like to get started in the morning so that we can have good conversations and when our brains are fresh and learn a little bit. And as you guys know, it's kind of a daily thing. There are no days off when it comes to figuring out how to be a smarter, better, more creative Black person. And so today I have a really interesting topic that we're going to address involving an NBA star who apparently feels that the 20 million a year that he made in the NBA makes him incapable of paying about $6,000 in child support. Before I begin, I would like to welcome my special guest for today. You might know her from Fly Nubian Queen TV, Miss Nomalanga Mushali Moses. How you doing today, Noma?
I'm doing great, boys. How are you?
I'm doing extremely well, extremely well. And if you will give me a second, Noma, I would like to greet and welcome all my intelligent Black people who are hanging out in the house today. If you're
Sure.
intelligent, say, yes, I am. If you are Black and strong, say, yes, I am. If you're going to achieve your goals, say, yes, I am. Cookie Price, Ashley, Brandon, Tamarez, Rebecca, Julia, L. Nathan. If you are going to overcome white supremacy, then say, yes, I am. If you are already overcoming white supremacy, say, yes, I am. If your children are going to be great for the next generation, say, yes, they are. Michelle Martin, good morning, Michelle. I see Rosalind says, yes, I am. Jamar, how you doing? I see Courtney, Nita Terrence, Content 101, Andrew, Sharon White, Radar Games, Leslie Savage, Ill Will, Sharon White, Terrence Blackstock, Nita Singleton, Leslie Savage, Teddy Woodson. Happy Easter. Oh, that's right. I forgot that it's Easter. Noma, did you know that?
I forgot too. Yeah.
I don't, sorry. Yeah, holidays like that, I just forget about stuff like that. But yeah, it's right. That's right. It is Easter. So happy Easter to everybody. I didn't know this. You may be watching the recording. So if you're watching the recording, then just go back, get in your time machine and go backward in time, and you'll know that I'm still telling you happy Easter way back then. All right. So do me a favor, everybody. If you haven't hit the thumbs up button, please hit the thumbs up button. Please hit the thumbs up button. Now, Nomalanga is all the way in Botswana. And as you guys know, we do the city shout out at the start of our meeting of intelligent Black people. So in 3, 2, 1, I want you to shout out your city, your business, or your dream. Your city, your business, or your dream, or all three. You can shout out as many of those things as you want. So let's see what cities we got represented in here right quick. All right, so let me see here. I'm gonna keep setting us up here as you guys shout out your cities, your business, and your dream. Okay, so let me see here. All right, I see Champion Bakery, Bronx, New York. All right, Detroit. I want to go to Champion Bakery, Andrew. My manager's email address is manager@boycewatkins.com. Send your information if you can, because I'd like to come by your bakery. I like bakeries. I used to be a fat person. Fat people like. I see Michael Finley from Detroit, Extra Cheese from Syracuse. Now, Detroit, I'm going to Detroit with David Banner and Michi X very soon. I think it's the Black Agenda Tour. I think the URL is theblackagendatour.com or something like that. So feel free to come by there. Craig Samuels from Flint, Extra Cheese from Syracuse. What's up, Syracuse? Newcastle, Delaware, Leslie Savage, D. Fernando, Louisville, Kentucky. That's my city. Augusta, Georgia for Space Age. I see April from Springfield, Illinois. Let's see, Santee, South Carolina, future film writer and director. That's what's up. Yakinia. Drexel Clark, Augusta, Georgia. Cookie Price, Johns Creek, Georgia, real estate. Sean Vernon, Atlanta. We got a whole lot of smart Black people in here. Richard Scott, Jacksonville. All right. So just a reminder to everybody, Dr. Boyce TV is the home for intelligent Black people. So if you're not intelligent and Black, you might want to fill in the blanks. You might want to get the blank out. So I'll let you guys fill that in, because I promised myself I ain't gonna cuss this morning because it's Easter, and cussing, that would just be some horrible shit to be cussing on Easter. So I'm not.
Some horrible what?
I know, right? I sorry. Did I say that? I didn't mean to say that. Oh my gosh! It's the devil. It's white supremacy.
I was flattering myself, thinking that you weren't cussing because there's a lady on the podcast with you.
Nah, I can't. If I respect you as a lady, that means I'm probably gonna cuss more in front of you because I'm gonna beat myself in front of you. So no air. I put on no airs up in this place. So Norma Langdon, let me let's get started. So you in addition to doing excellent work on your show on the Norma Langdon show on Fly Nubian Queen, you also have a great charity called Pads for Our Girls.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
can you quickly, before we get started, I want to make sure everybody knows about the charity so that they can go support if they'd like to. And it's Botswana based. What do you do with Pads for Our Girls?
Thank you, boys. Pass for Our Girls is very, very simple. What we're doing is we are providing free sanitary pads to girls, mostly who are underprivileged. And what has happened, or what we became aware of, is that there are young girls who are missing schools and dropping out of school because they don't have sanitary pads and it's too embarrassing for them to go to school. And some of them are compromising their hygiene because they're using what they shouldn't be using just to try and get by. So we provide free sanitary pads to schoolgirls all over Botswana. And when we're done with Botswana, we're moving on to other African countries. So we really do appreciate the support. And I'm going to put you on the spotlight and say that you have donated very, very generously and support a whole group of girls every single month for a year. So we do appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so everybody in here, if you'd like to support, this very important charity, I know, as Americans, we see a lot of the issues that happen here. But I'm gonna tell you like this straight out. I care about Black people around the world as well. And so, when Noma Lenga brought this to me, I didn't even know that was an issue. I just to show my ignorance, Noma, I didn't even really I'd never processed that because I've never needed a sanitary pad and I never thought about the idea of somebody missing education because of a lack of access. And when I thought about how little, we could do to make a big difference in somebody's life, to me, it's a no-brainer. It's something that God wants us to do when something like that's put in front of you. So I hope everyone will find it in their heart to consider supporting the charity. The URL, let me give this to you before we get started. It's padsforourgirls.com. If somebody could type that in, padsforourgirls.com, padsforourgirls.com. So please put that URL into the chat and please support, so that we can help some sisters over in Botswana. Okay, so oh, you're absolutely welcome. So Norma, like let's hop into the topic for today. I read this interesting story about this NBA player. I referenced him as an NBA star. He's not a star anymore because he's retired. But his name is Joe Johnson. And Joe Johnson right now is in child support court, kind of going through it because he's making this argument that he can't pay his child support. And the reason he can't pay the child support is basically because he says that he's not making his 20 million a year from the NBA anymore, and that apparently 20 million a year is what you need in order to pay $6,000 a month. I was kind of surprised by this, because 20 million a year is a lot of money. I think Johnson made over the course of his entire NBA career, I think he made a total of maybe $214 million. And so, this led to a lot of thoughts. I mean, because as a financial guy, I'm kind of, blown away when somebody makes that kind of money on that kind of scale. And then at the end, they're like, oh, well, now I'm out of money. I don't have any more money left. So now I'm like a regular poor person. That just seems that blows my mind a little bit. Can you, Noma, kind of give your quick take on that in terms of just what your initial thoughts are on all that?
Sure. I absolutely believe him because unfortunately, a lot of times when people make money as quote unquote celebrities, as quick as they make it is as quick as they blow it. And then they revert back to who they were before they became a so-called celebrity. That is why I'm so invested in teaching about, talking about, promoting generational wealth, where in our families, we have habits that we pass to each other and down to our children, our grandchildren, and so on, where every generation, we're not only building wealth, we're growing the wealth that we got from the next generation. But it's not surprising to me at all if he doesn't have any money. He probably just spent it as quick as he got it. It's the habits.
Interesting. Well, I think that the weird thing about this story to me, and I empathize with that, right? There's something to be said about, about how, that when you make a lot of money and you suddenly are making just this insane amount of money, you think you're never going to run out. It's easy to get caught in a lot of very fixed expenses. Like you're like, oh, $3,000 a month for a new car. Oh, that's no big deal. $5,000 a month for a new house, no big deal. Let's get another car for another $3,000 a month, right? Because you're sitting there thinking. I mean, Joe Johnson literally was making $2 million a month. They said in the NBA, like when he was playing in the NBA, Joe. Let me see. According to this article in the Blast, Joe Johnson. I think he played for the Atlanta Hawks, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But in the years that he played in the NBA, he was making $2 million a month. So I want you to process that, right? You're bringing in $2 million a month. Then what's an extra $10,000 a month spent on whatever, right? Or because I mean, even if you're spending $10,000 a month on something, then you still got $1,990,000 a month coming. I mean, that's an unfathomable amount of money. Like that's an amount of money where regular people can't relate to that because it is so ridiculously insane.
Right.
So I think that what's strange though is, this idea that he made that much money for that long and now he doesn't have enough income producing assets to allow him to keep paying $6,000 a month in child support. Let me read some of this to you, and then we can kind of pick apart this particular situation. But as you guys know, we use inductive reasoning, which means we'll start talking about the story, but the goal is to sort of see the bigger picture. So according to the Blast, it says Joe Johnson's baby mama. They just when white
they called her that.
Yeah, when white people write about us, they write in degrading language. Joe Johnson's baby mama is demanding a judge dismiss the former NBA star's lawsuit to slash his monthly child support checks. According to court documents obtained by the Blast, Shannon Becton is denying that Johnson's monthly income has taken a hit since he left the NBA. Becton says the child support deal in place, where Johnson pays $6,250 a month in support plus other bills, should remain as is. She wants Johnson's lawsuit dismissed and for him to pay her legal bills. Johnson sued Becton, the mother of his 12-year-old son. So apparently he's been, paying the child support for about 12 years. He argued that he was no longer pulling in $2 million a month while playing in the NBA. And because of this, let me see here. He says that because of this, he wants a reduction. So over the years, Johnson's child support has varied depending on different factors. The last court order was for $6,250 per year. He came into the league in 2001 and played for the Houston Rockets in 2017, 2018. He pulled in $214 million over the course of 17 seasons. Do any thoughts come to mind as you kind of read or kind of hear what I just read to you?
Yes. The same thing that we said about him, we can say about her. If she was getting really good child support for 12 years, she should have also secured some assets to make sure that if that gravy train stopped, her child had something that could continue to pay her and the child after that. And I'm willing to bet she didn't, and that's why she's probably fighting so hard to keep the gravy train going. Your mic is off, boys.
Yeah, when I do that, that means my mic is off. Sorry, I mute myself when you're talking because a lot of times I'll hit something on the keyboard. I think that's true. You're right. You're right. I mean, I didn't process it so much that way, but I think that there is this question. Tell me, guys, if you agree. Yes or no. Yes or no. Yes or no. I read in the article. One thing I also read further down was that the amount of money that he paid her was enough to pay her rent and all her bills, and like when they moved or when he would switch teams, he paid all her travel expenses. And they weren't married. It wasn't like he was paying for his wife, but she was the mother of his child, which makes her important. But the question remains, if you have a child with someone who is wealthy, does that mean that they have an obligation to pay all your bills? you know, I mean, to really go above and beyond and give you an amount of money that you can live off of. I mean, $6,000 a month, that's about 70 something thousand dollars a year. I don't know if any of you in here, tell me if you make less than $75,000 a year. If you make less than 75 grand a year, you know, do you think it's fair that someone can have a child with with a rich person and receive a full salary because they have a baby? You know, I mean, you know, that seems like a lot. What do you think, Noma?
I think that's an oversimplification of it. You know, the language that you always hear when these things are going on is they say the lifestyle to which they were accustomed. You know, so when a person apparently gets used to living a certain way, having to downgrade that does feel oppressive to them. But to answer the question, if you are, you know, a wealthy man and you get together with a woman, I have a hard time believing that as a wealthy man, you would take on a woman that has no value in your life and make a partner out of her and have a child with her and build a life with her. So it must mean that even though she was not adding monetary value to your life, she was adding some kind of value to your life. And if that's the lifestyle that she got accustomed to while she was adding value to your life, yes, she deserves whatever you pay her at the level of income that you're at.
Interesting. Well, you know, I can see that. I think that it's sort of like we know what the rules are, right? We know that if you're rich and you have a child with somebody else, you're going to be the one that's paying, right? So based on the rules, there's just sort of a standard understanding that says just know what you're signing up for, because you're signing up for a lot, you know, and there's going to be things expected of you simply because you had a child with this person. There's nothing you can do about that, right? You know, but then there's sort of like there's always sometimes a little bit of a gap or some sort of maybe a wide gap between the way things are and the way that things should be. You know, it's like, for example, the constant debate on sexual assault is, you know, is that we shouldn't warn women not to go up to a man's room at 2 o'clock in the morning because, you know, because women shouldn't be getting raped in the first place.
Yeah, but I don't subscribe to that. I just want to say I don't subscribe to that.
Right. Because you're on that side that says, you know, look, this is the way things are. Sometimes people just do things they shouldn't do, and you don't want to put yourself in a position where bad things can happen to you, right? But then there are other people who say, no, you're blaming the victim. You're victim blaming, right? And right. So that's a whole debate, right? So I think that with this, you know, the debate here is, you know, when I talk to a man or even a woman who makes a lot of money, I think it's sort of like, look, this is the way it is. You know, you make $2 million a month. Regular people don't make that kind of money. Regular people don't even make $2 million in a decade. You know, like you're making more money in a month than most people make over a 10, 20-year period. So just know that that's going to make you a target. Just know that, you know, there will be women lined up out the door trying to have a baby with you because that will secure them a lifetime of income. It ain't right, but it's life. It is what it is, you know, and knowing that, be thoughtful about where you plant your seed because you are going to have a cost that you have to pay for the rest of your life. And you kind of wonder if people were thinking about this when you talk about Joe Johnson and guys like that, you know, they play in the NBA and they make a couple $100 million. You kind of wonder if that's what's going through their mind, you know, when they're laying down with some pretty girl that they met at the club that night, you know, because for a lot of men, one of the instant benefits of having lots of money is that you get lots of sex, you know, and so, but the thing is, while you might think that getting lots of sex is something that is, is something that's going to benefit you, you don't think about the fact that actually you might be a beneficiary to somebody else. You know, so I don't know. By the way, somebody just wrote up in here that Paris says that Paris is listening in church. See, you're going to hell for that. Jesus gonna come get you. Jesus is gonna come get you. Anyway, let me get back to it. All right. So Noma, what are your thoughts on that in terms of, you know, I personally always thought it was a little strange. I didn't get it. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't understand. Like, okay, if I have a child with you, that means I gotta pay all your bills, your hair, your nails, and everything. Even if you got a boyfriend or a man in your house, I still have to give you enough. Just because I make a lot of money, I have to give you enough.
It's not just because you make a lot of money. It's because you make a lot of money and you have a child with me.
Oh, okay. So
there's that part too. But I'm gonna answer your question. I'm gonna ask
Well,
you a question.
I mean, so it almost seems like having babies, baby making could be like a business for some women, right?
For
Like,
some women, it is. For some women, it is. There are women who come from families that where they're told, like, don't you touch those broke men. Just go for the gold, you know? And that's why we have the word gold digger.
like the Olympics.
But I was going to say, I want to go back to the original point I made about wealth building and passing wealth down from generation to generation. People who truly come from wealthy families are groomed to not just plant their seed anywhere. You know, you watch some of these movies, and I understand it's make believe, and sometimes they tend to be Tyler Perry movies where this wicked mother of the man goes to the girl he made pregnant and pays her money to go away and have an abortion, and then pays her off to never show her face again. What she's really doing is she understands wealth building, and she understands generational wealth, and she understands that this person is a threat, right? And she's also trying to compensate for her son's, you know, mistake. But she also wants him to understand that when you pick a life partner and you pick where to plant your seed, it has to be very well thought out. It has to be somebody who comes from a family that's also decent, like we're decent, a family that's also invested in not just building wealth, but also building success, people who give back to their community, people who are good members of society. So you have to duplicate that generation after generation. And that's why I say it's so important to recognize that some of these people came into money without actually knowing how to keep the money and sustain it for at least 100 years, which is about 3 generations. You cannot truly say you're a wealthy family until you've sustained that for 100 years. Otherwise, it's just a fluke, right? You just made some money and then you lose it. So it doesn't really mean you're a wealthy family. You're just a person who happened to make money and then lost it.
Interesting. Well, by the way, I'm talking to Nomalanga Musheli Moses, and we're talking about NBA star Joe Johnson, and who made $214 million in his NBA career, and he's now suing his child's mother. They call her baby mama in the article, but I'm not going to call her baby mama. She's the mother of his child.
Thank you.
She's suing, you're welcome. She's suing, or he's suing her, saying he can't afford to pay the child support anymore because his income has dropped, which makes sense on the surface, right? Now, why did I pick this particular topic? Well, I picked the topic because, you know, I thought that when he said I need a reduction in my child support, it's killing me. I thought that it was some massive amount of money. You know, guys that make $20 million a year don't pay $6,000 a month in child support. That's a ridiculously low amount. Like I'm sitting there thinking, you must have had R. Kelly's lawyer or something, because whoever you had as a lawyer did a damn good job for you. Because most people say you are lucky as hell to pay $6,000 a month in child support and you're making $2 million a month. You know, when I'll just tell a little bit of my personal business. When I was at Syracuse and I made slightly over 100 grand at Syracuse, I paid like I think 1,100 or 1,200 a month, right? So I paid a sixth of what he made, but I didn't make a sixth of what he makes in income, right? Like my income, you multiply it by 6, it's like 600, 700,000 a year. But he made 20 million a year, you know, like, so theoretically, if you use that same formula, if I paid, you know, 1,100 a month or whatever, it was enough money that I hated writing that check. Like I physically could not bring myself to write that check because I was so angry about the
That's
idea.
a mortgage. You could have had a property.
What'd you say?
I said, that's a mortgage. You could have had a property.
Well, you know what? It bothered me, I think, because I remember feeling like it was like taxation without representation. You know, I said, my gosh, I'm paying all this money and I get no say in what happens with this money. You know, or when you write a child support check and then 2 days later, your child is calling you saying, Dad, I need $300 for the school field trip. And you want to say, well, your mom's got the money. Your mama got it. Call your mom, you know, and you can't, right? As a parent, you can't do that. But it's very frustrating. And what I learned from this is why I talk to young men about this, is when I went through that, I said, I'm not going through this shit no more. Excuse my French. If I have another child, I'm going to make sure all my rights are secured. I'm going to get married. If I don't get married, I will have no more children. And I didn't have any more kids because I did not want, because it was very traumatic to have, you know, just have someone feel, you know, anybody feel like they could just go in your pocket and just pull money from you because of something, you know, where it doesn't mean, like, I've always believed a man should take care of his kids. That's not in dispute. The question is, what's the context of that? Like, what should that look like? You know, so anyway, if you use that same formula, where you take the amount I made and the amount I paid, and you compare it to what Joe Johnson makes, then somebody could argue that Joe should have been paying like, $50 to $100,000 a month in child support, or at least 40,000, 30,000, right? I don't have a calculator in front of me to do the calculation, but a lot, right? Like, because literally, if what was it, 120 million? Let me see, that would be 10 times, 200 times more. So you take that amount and you multiply by 200. You're talking about 200 grand a month. Now that's an insane amount of money, but it's not out of the question. I mean, it's not unheard of. There have been people that pay tens of thousands a month.
There's women who get judgments like that.
Right, exactly. So I think that in this particular case, he was lucky. So the idea that he's saying, look, I made $20 million a year. I made 214 million, almost $250 million in my NBA career, and now I can't pay $6,250 a month in child support. It makes you ask yourself, like, what were you doing with all that money?
Blowing it.
Right. Like, what were you doing with that? And who let you blow that money? What kind of friends did you have around you that let you take that amount of money and throw that away? Do you know that is generational wealth? That's most corporations don't make that level of money. A lot of big like companies that employ hundreds of people don't make that kind of money. They don't make that much in profit in a year, right? So what is happening here that led you to take that money and blow that much money over time? What do you thought?
I have one idea. I don't know what he did with his money. I'm not going to say I know. But one thing I can tell you, boys, having been around numerous millionaires, is that what happens when you become a millionaire or when your income increases, suddenly you have lots of relatives that you didn't know about with their hands out. And you also just seem to have lots of friends who suddenly need to stare at the ceiling when the bill comes. when you're out eating or drinking or whatever it is. And it may not seem like much, but people really will take on this thing of spending your money for you and with you, even though they're not earning it for you or with you. And that can take a toll on an income, any income, depending on how many of those people there are around you. And then I'll still go back again to my original point. Your habits are what really will decide for you. If you're a person with habits that leak out more money than is coming in, and in the end, there's not going to be any left. That's just how it works.
I agree with you. A lot of the NBA players that go broke, they tend to go broke not for necessarily being financially silly. A lot of them go broke for being extremely generous. They become like almost like these walking foundations or walking charities or walking welfare offices for people that have a financial problem, and you get caught in a lot of, and it doesn't just happen to rich NBA players. It happens to anybody have this experience in your own family where you're the one person who is successful and you're making lots of money and you're doing better than most of your relatives. So maybe out of survivor's guilt, because you feel bad, you feel like they just weren't as lucky or as blessed as you, even though a lot of times it's because you worked hard and you went to college and they chose not to or whatever. Because they weren't as blessed as you feel like you've got to like pay the bill. Like you go out to eat, you always have to pay. Whether there's a financial problem, you always have to, be the one that helps to cover it. I don't know if anybody goes through that, but I noticed that in the community, there's a lot of survivor's guilt, financial survivor's guilt in the Black community. And what happens is, that one person that it's like a tree trying to grow out of a pack of weeds almost. Not that your relatives are weeds, but I'm talking about just bad economic soil. You're growing out of bad economic soil where that tree eventually dies because the tree can only grow so much in bad soil, right? So in bad economic soil, one symptom of it is having people that are quicker to come to you to take your money or ask for your money than they are to come and offer you money or help you out or give you financing or support you. I want to say thank you to Tony Smith for your donation. I appreciate it. I made you a moderator. Tony says, why are the courts so strict about giving millionaires payment reductions? I know brothers who have payment reductions they couldn't afford. Okay, so why are they so strict about giving millionaires payment reductions? Well, I don't know. Do you think that there was a bias? Like, do you think that he was mistreated because he's a millionaire in Omalanga, or do you think that it was fair? Or do you think that he got special?
Look, we don't even know how many other children he had, right? It could just be that sometimes people pay low child support because they're spreading around, and I'm not saying that he did, because they're spreading it around, not just one child or not just one household. He could have had a great lawyer. He could have had a stupid quote unquote baby mama who didn't demand more. There's so many things that we don't know because the article doesn't state them. But I also wanted to say, boys, that what you're describing is what Trevor Noah calls the Black tax, where being successful as a Black person naturally means that if you grew up in in a humble beginning, if you had a humble beginning, it means that now you're taxed over and over and over and over again by other Black people who have the expectation that, you made it out of this township or this ghetto or whatever it is, and now we have a right to whatever you're making.
Well, I don't have a big problem with the Black tax to a point. I think that everybody should get back to where they came from. I do. Right. I think that what we have to realize too, though, is that the Black tax has to go in two directions. If you get taxed, you're getting taxed because you're receiving some sort of benefit. You're supposed to theoretically, so to me, as much as we expect successful people to give back to the hood, if you will, the hood should be giving to those people. So if you want money out of, your cousin who went to the NBA, you got to figure out like what value are you giving them back? What are you doing to help? Are you coming to work for that person and adding real value? Because work, you don't deserve a salary for being in the entourage. Like that's something I think, like when I advise athletes, I'm like, well, if a person can't add value to your life and you're supporting them financially, then you're going to lose. They're a parasite. They're going to drain you and you're getting nothing back in return. Whereas LeBron James, took care of a lot of his friends. It almost seems to me, I'm not sure, I don't know LeBron, but it seemed to me that the understanding is, look, if you add value, and I can even open the door for you. I can send you to school. I think he sent one of his friends to school to be a cook or chef or something. Yeah. He sent another friend to business school. I don't know all the details, but I've heard, I've just sort of heard these things through the grapevine. I said, my gosh, this is so intelligent that this man is, reaching out to his friends and taking good care of them in that way. And so I would say that, the problem with the Black tax is when you have somebody that has no ambition, no skill, no financial responsibility, no sense of that whatsoever. And they're just bringing you one financial problem after another. And you're just literally doling out the checks.
And there has to be a limit. There has to be a limit to how much Black tax you pay. I mean, every organization, corporation, if they're ethical and, they really do want to give something back to the community that's supporting, their products or services or whatever, they do have a little budget on the side for philanthropy or a charity or something, right? They always do. Because you should know intellectually that there's no way you can just take and never give back. But you should also be smart enough to know that you don't just give until there's nothing left. There should be some, you should be smart about it, I think.
Well, by the way, actually, before we get started, before we move forward, I'm speaking to Nomalanga Mushali Moses from FlyNewbieandQueenTV.com, and we're talking about NBA star Joe Johnson and the fact that Joe Johnson, after making $214 million throughout his NBA career, is now saying that he can't afford to pay his child support, which is very, very weird. His child support isn't that much. It's about $62.50 a month, so it's kind of strange. Now, let's take a quick break, and I want to ask you guys if you could do me a quick favor. If you haven't hit the thumbs up button on Financial Juneteenth TV, please hit the thumbs up button on Dr. Boyce TV. If you haven't hit the thumbs up button, please hit the thumbs up button on Facebook. Please share the video, share, thumbs up, all that stuff. So everybody, on the count of three, please hit the thumbs up button if you haven't done so. 1, 2, 3. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Please do that. And also, please share the video. Also, if you'd like to support intelligent Black media, we invite you to participate in supporting the channel by going to blackfinancialintelligence.com. That's blackfinancialintelligence.com. Our belief is that we can overcome white supremacy within 2 generations by making Black children the most financially intelligent children on the planet, and putting them ahead of everybody else. And that's what we do. So blackfinancialintelligence.com is where we can give you tools and resources and books and things like that that you can take a look at. So Kenyatta, I want to say thank you very much for your donation as well. We will put that to good use in supporting intelligent Black media. So ain't no ratchetry up in here unless we feel like just being ratchet that day. So I believe in freedom of speech. Sometimes, I don't know if you know, last night, No Malanga, I was out with Alicia and we were eating a Red Lobster and we were getting the cheddar biscuits. So I was feeling kind of fancy that day. And I did, and the video I did on my channel was I think, what was the title? I think it was called the time I took a hood rat out to dinner. And what I did was I was talking, and people were like, why are you talking about this, Dr. Boyce? Blah, blah, blah. I said, because I'm human and I have human experiences. And if I see a human experience that lends itself to a teachable moment, I'm tempted to share that. And plus I was pissed off because it drained me and milked me of my money. And it taught me a big lesson though about, like Belle Biv DeVoe used to say, never trust a big button to smile. And men, we get all caught up and we see a pretty girl and we just want to go shower her with money. And I was in grad school and it was the worst date ever because it was a deliberate, very blatant effort on her part to just kind of milk me like a cow. And I remember feeling used. I felt, I don't know how women feel like if they give a man cheap sex and they regret it. Like I've never gone through that because I've never regretted sex. But but if there's any way to identify with that feeling, I imagine that will probably be it because I felt used. I felt like, I remember thinking, I'm not going to spend my money on a woman unless I feel like she's a worthy person to invest in. I'm glad
you did kind of take a moment because I've heard women say they felt so cheap and so used and milked and all these other things. Well, maybe not milked.
Well, milked.
But and you don't hear it too often from men, and I'm not glad that happened to you, but I think it's more common to hear women saying that they felt used, like just really, really used and hurt. It's interesting to see it come from the other end. But I always say it, and I think sometimes it makes people mad, but a man's currency is money and a woman's currency is the sex. Women value security, and security usually means that, a man has to be financially stable, and men, if they're normal, healthy, masculine men, value sex and lots of it. And that's the trade, So when a woman is used, it means a man, took her sex with no good intention. And when a man feels used, it means a woman took his money with no good intention.
Yeah, well, I agree. I definitely felt used. And I think it's, it really taught me a lot about, just the flaws in terms of how we go about picking our mates. I don't think people really realize the long-term implications financially and otherwise, emotionally as well, of just picking somebody haphazardly. Like if you're single and they're attractive and they're nice to you, oh, that means we're supposed to hook up. We're supposed to keep this going. And it's not good training, I think, in terms of how you pick. Like, so, I'm thinking about this situation with Joe Johnson. I would be willing to bet you that if he would go back in time and say, well, would you pick this person as your partner? He'd probably say no, and maybe she'd say the same thing. I don't know. But I think that's kind of something that's really interesting. And the other thing that's interesting is that people should understand, I believe, or consider, the financial impact of having kids out of wedlock, especially if you have a lot of kids out of wedlock. I did research and on single moms and net worth and things like that. And basically 50%, and this is including white women, half of all single moms have a 0 or negative net worth. So as much as we might want to talk about moms that have kids out of wedlock as being gold diggers or whatever, people will use that language. I don't agree with that. I think that you have a child with somebody, you got to take care of that child. But as much as people might want to critique and say, oh, they're just getting rich off of this, it doesn't seem like having babies is a good business, because half of all single moms having 0 or negative net worth, and the median net worth of a single Black mother is just $5. What do you say that, just on the mother's side, the financial impact of having children out of wedlock? You know, what would you say are the challenges of that, the flaws of that?
Well, boys, I had my children after I was married, and it was still a challenge, right? I always share the story about where I had a decent job. I was a sales and marketing manager at, I think it was a Hilton hotel. So it was a decent, great job, you know what I mean? And I had 2 children, but when it was all said and done, after, taxes and health insurance or whatever came out of my paycheck, what came to me on a weekly basis, after I paid childcare for those 2 children, I only had $100 left every week. And I eventually started to question if I should even be working. So now you have to wonder, but I had the support of a partner, a husband, right? So even if I stopped working, the money would still come through the husband. But you have to think about the fact that if you don't put your children in daycare, what are you going to do with them? They're there, they're physically there. So you can't really work. Even if you want to run a business, you can't really run it effectively if you have 2 small children, or sometimes women have a whole gaggle of children. And it's a real thing. And they want to be fed, they want to be clothed, they want love, they want affection. There's a lot that goes into it. And that requires money. And if you can't make the money, but the money is required, that's a really tough situation. So I believe that. People often think that the story of the welfare mom is, some poor woman somewhere, but you could end up in a welfare type of situation just from having a lot of children without being in a marriage or in a committed relationship where you have the help and the support.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think Robin Cooper asked a good question. She said, "Why is she the problem?" And I agree with you, Robin. I don't think she's the problem. I really don't. I don't think that the amount of money that she's asking for, based on what the blast is claiming that he earned in income, that should be chump change for him. And the fact that it's not makes me want to ask, what was going on with your money during all these years? It's not indicting him. I mean, it's not like he's had a bunch of kids sprinkled out everywhere. According to my research, Joe only has 1 child. So it's not like he has a bunch of babies mamas. He's not like the rapper Future just trying to populate the earth. He's got 1 child, and but I don't know. I kind of think that should be like lunch money for somebody like that. Not even lunch money. That's like snack money. And just so people can know how much wealth was actually given away. When an NBA player makes $214 million and ends up with nothing. Just to give you an idea of the missed opportunity, of the magnitude of it. If you look over, say, an 18-year period, and let's say Joe had invested a small fraction of his wealth, of his income. Let's say he invested $200,000 a month and just put it into the stock market to track the S&P 500. Now, you guys know I talk about investing. I teach a stock market class. If he'd done that over an 18-year period, he would have approximately $121 million. And that's in liquid assets. Now, 121 million just sitting there. I'm talking about a pile of liquid cash where you can go, the child support payment, $6,000. Yeah, just take that out of the fund. And it wouldn't even, it would be like, it wouldn't even be a drop in the bucket. It wouldn't be $121 million. I mean, think about that. So what is it? Let me see, 10% of that is 12 million. So let's say he's earning a really low rate of return. Let's say he's only making 6-7 million a year. So he's getting 6-7 million a year in passive income that he gets without dunking a basketball, income that he gets without, a single basketball practice, without working a single hour of the day. He's making 6 to 10 million a year just because he's breathing, and he doesn't even have to breathe in order to make that money. Paying $6,000 a month in child support is nothing. That's nothing, because you're making $500,000 a month or more just from your assets that are not coming from your labor. So what are your thoughts on that? How do you feel, when I lay that out for you? What are your thoughts?
It again still goes back to my original thought when I said that your habits are what decide your future. Investing is not something that is that difficult once you understand it, but it's a habit. Right? You either do that one thing every month or every paycheck, or you don't do it. And that compounds over 10, 20, however many years. So it's just the basic habit. And unfortunately, people's habits magnify over time, right? If I'm only putting away $1 a day, and you're not putting away $1 a day, every day $1 doesn't seem like much. But when you do that over a year and then 10 years and 100 years or whatever, or you have that habit in your family that everybody does that, it creates a different reality. That's why I say that, it really is important to think about generational wealth and generational success, because it's a very real thing. And the habits, like even like if people wanted to just sleep around, the family that knows that you have to have protected sex is going to have a different experience than the ones who just don't care or don't bother because they have nothing to lose. So it just really makes a difference. Your habits really make a difference.
I agree. Everybody, I'm talking to Noma Langham with Shelly Moses from FlyNewBeingQueenTV.com. We're talking about NBA star Joe Johnson, who, according to The Blast, made $214 million over his NBA career, but now he's saying he can't pay his $6,200 a month child support, which is very surprising to me. Do me a favor, please hit the thumbs up button. If you want to get text notifications when we go live, you can text the word voice to 31996, text voice to 31996. Also, don't forget we're on iTunes. So if you go to iTunes and search for my name, you can actually find my podcast on iTunes. So make sure you go to iTunes and you do that. Noma, I'll tell you this. I think that, I agree with Shelly. Shelly is asking, why are women always blamed, in child support situations? I don't think anybody's to blame. I think that we should all be blamed for kind of creating these weird messes when it comes to our kids.
The women are not always blamed.
Right. Well, yeah, I think that everybody gets blamed and everybody deserves the blame, right? And depending on your bias, that's what determines who gets blamed, right? If your bias is against men, then you blame the men, vice versa, right? Men go to jail for not paying their child support, but then moms are stuck in situations where they're paying all these bills for the kids, and you got this ridiculous baby's daddy who thinks that he's being a great dad by buying like Christmas gifts once a year, you know what I mean? Like stupid stuff like that. But a lot of that, I think, comes from, bad parental training as well. My question is, if you have a man who thinks that he's really being a great dad by buying a Christmas gift and a birthday gift, and nothing else, or a box of diapers once every couple of months, who taught him that? Who made him believe that that's what you're supposed to do as a father, that that's all you're supposed to do, right? But then I think when you look at moms and what they're going through and the situation they end up in, where, if you ever want to have a 10-hour conversation, just grab get a group of women together with a bottle of wine and tell them to talk about their kids' fathers, right? Right, you get a 10-hour complaining fest, right? So again, but then that leads to that question of, was there any strategic planning in terms of you deciding who you're going to get with? What was it that made you make that decision to be with that particular person? And usually there's nothing logical or strategic about it. It's like, I thought he was good looking, he swept me off my feet, or he had a lot of swag, or I like to date thugs. Not you. I'm not talking about you. I'm saying.
No, I'm saying a lot of times they weren't even thinking about having babies. They were thinking about having sex. And that's a two different world. One causes the other, but a lot of times those babies don't come from people who thought they were having a baby. They come from people who were trying to have a good time for one night or an extended period of time. And those are two very separate things.
Well, that's true too. I agree. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's like you're rolling the dice and you're hoping that you don't crap out.
And even with the men, like I sometimes sympathize with the men when they don't necessarily step up as much, is because I don't know you. I slept with you once. I don't know you. And you expect to tie yourself to, you understand, you tie my life to yours forever. But yeah, he's responsible for the child, but it's also kind of understandable that he doesn't feel that emotional connection and that tie to that woman because he didn't really know her. And it goes the other way too, that she also, opened up her womb literally to somebody that she didn't know, and now has the expectation that he will somehow turn into a responsible person.
Well, I think a good way to put it is like this, right? The average cost of raising a child in America anyway is about $250,000, right? $250,000 committed per child, right? So that means you have 4 kids, They would say it could be as high as $1 million or more, or maybe a little less, whatever. So I think that it's interesting when you think about it like this. Um, you know, what if somebody came to you and they said, we're going to roll this dice, and there's a 1 in 20 chance that you're going to end up, um, having to commit the rest of your life to another person that you don't know very well, raising a child to the age of 18, an 18-year contract, and it's going to cost you $250,000. How many people would roll that dice? How many people would do that? Or if you're going to go to school and they say, oh yeah, we want you to commit to this program, and the program is going to be 18 years long. It's going to take up all of your time, and you're going to have to pay $250,000 to graduate. Like, how many people would sign up for that? Tell me yes or no. Yes or no. Would you sign up for a graduate program or an undergrad program that was going to take 18 years? You're going to be in school for 18 years, and it was going to cost you $250,000. How many would do that or not do that? Yes or no? Yes or no? Right? Okay. I see some no's. So to me, I think that a lot of times what we forget is that building wealth really tends to happen. Wealth building tends to happen for those who are strategic. That's it, right? And strategic means looking ahead, looking down the road, looking at actions and reactions, long-term, consequences, cause and effect. And if you're not doing that, then you're probably not going to build wealth, because what's going to happen is you're going to be playing checkers and not chess, and you'll end up in situations that are going to drain your wealth as opposed to build your wealth. Because one thing that we know for sure, whether you blame the mothers or the fathers, when you have out of wedlock situations, not judging it. I'm not judging it at all. I mean, people do what they're going to do. It's not my life, so who am I to judge? But one thing we know for sure is that neither the father nor the mother financially benefit from those situations. The fathers end up, running from the law, worried about going to prison for child support payments, in these crazy situations where they're flat broke, can't get ahead because, half their check is being garnished for child support, which is terrible, right? And then the mothers are struggling, not getting any help, spending every penny on your child, working 2 or 3 jobs, kids at home by themselves, getting into God knows what. Your kids are vulnerable, because you're not home to protect them. There's no man in the house to protect them, right? So it's all these, the median net worth of a single Black mother is $5. So I think that no matter how people feel about this, and because there's a lot of single parents that are in here, people that had kids without being married. I'm one of them. I did that. So I'm not judging anybody. But I think that we can all agree. I hope we can agree. Tell me yes or no if you agree that part of solving the Black wealth problem is figuring out a way to keep our families together, figuring out a way to have children in a more strategic fashion. Tell me yes or no if you even see where I'm coming from on this. No, Malanga, what are your thoughts?
I wholeheartedly agree. I'm a huge advocate of marriage, getting married, staying married, and passing that on from generation to generation. It's a proven fact, actually, that that's how wealth stays in families, is through successful marriages that pass on from generation to generation. Because once you split and you go 2 ways, you're already splitting it in half, and usually both halves struggle after that. So I wholeheartedly agree with what you said.
All right. Well, you know what? I think we've covered quite a bit here. We've had a good conversation. I hope you guys have benefited from the discussion. If you could give Nomalanga a big digital round of applause and let her know that you appreciate her taking her time to come in and talk to us. And also, I want to give you guys, let's see, a lot of feedback from the microphone, says Paris. Okay. Tell me, Paris, if that helps at all. I just pulled out a plug. Let me know if that makes it sound better, Paris. Give me a yes or no. But by the way, if you want to support Nomalanga's charity to get sanitary pads for young girls in Botswana, please go to padsforourgirls.com. That's padsforourgirls.com. Thank you, Paris. I appreciate you giving me the feedback on that. Also, please hit the thumbs up button. Everybody hit the thumbs up button before you go. We're on iTunes. Don't forget that Dr. Boyce TV is on iTunes, so you can get the podcast there. Last but not least, summer is coming. Your kids need to be smarter at the end of the summer than they were at the beginning. Let's make our kids financially intelligent. We have wonderful flashcards that were built for Black kids, designed by me, at financialflashcards.com. Your kids can learn financial literacy that way. Financialflashcards.com. We also have financial workbooks, which you can find at financialworkbooks.com. In addition to that, there's plenty of stuff for adults and stuff like that as well. But if you go to financialflashcards.com or financialworkbooks.com, I encourage you, get them for your kids, get them for the neighborhood's kid, the neighbor's kids. If somebody's birthday comes up, give them an educational gift. Don't just give them a toy. Toys decline in value. Toys are like buying new cars. You know, they're going to be worthless in just a few months or a couple of years. Whereas if you give them financial literacy, that will last them for life and will last them even beyond their death, because it's going to create generational and cultural shifts that lead to long-term sustainable economic situations. So feel free to go to financialworkbooks.com. So thank you very much, Nomalanga. I appreciate your time. It was awesome.
Thank you, Blaze, and thank you, everybody.
All right, and you can stay on if you want to, Nomalanga. You and I can talk, and I'll see you guys soon, and have a good day. Thanks for hanging out.